This homeless man approached me every day. Then I learned who my wife really was.
I have always found a certain comfort in the predictability of numbers. In my line of work, as a senior financial analyst for one of the largest investment firms in Seattle, numbers are the only language that truly matters. They do not lie. They do not smile to your face while hiding a dagger behind their back. If a column does not balance, there is a reason, a missing variable, a miscalculation, a glitch in the equation. You simply have to find it. My life, much like my spreadsheets, was balanced. I had the corner office on the 42nd floor of Summit Tower, a portfolio that was the envy of my peers, and Linda. Linda was the variable that made the rest of the equation beautiful. She was the color in a world of gray suits and endless rain. Every morning, I left our home in the quiet, leafy suburbs, and every evening I returned to it, a sanctuary we had built together. It was perfect. Or so I told myself. October in Seattle is less of a month and more of a mood. The sky hangs low and heavy, a bruise of charcoal clouds that weep indiscriminately on executives and tourists alike. That Tuesday was no different. The rain was not a downpour but a persistent, icy mist that clung to your skin and seeped into your bones. I stepped out of the lobby of Summit Tower, buttoning my trench coat against the chill, my mind already running through the morning meeting agenda. I needed to review the quarterly projections for the tech sector merger. I needed coffee. I did not need to be interrupted. He was there, as he always was. The man stood near the corner of the building, tucked partially into the shadow of the overhang to escape the worst of the drizzle. I had walked past him 100 times before. To me, and to everyone else rushing through the financial district, he was part of the urban landscape, invisible and static, like a fire hydrant or a lamppost. He was older, perhaps in his late 50s, with a beard that was more salt than pepper and eyes that held a strange, piercing clarity beneath the brim of a tattered baseball cap. He never begged. He never held a cardboard sign with a sob story scrawled in marker. He just watched. Usually, I would offer a quick, dismissive nod, perhaps drop a few coins into the empty coffee cup at his feet if I was feeling particularly charitable, and continue my march toward success. Today, I didn't even have the coins. I tightened my grip on my briefcase and aimed for the crosswalk, my eyes fixed on the pedestrian signal counting down the seconds. Mr. Evans. The voice was rough, like gravel crunching under tires, but it was steady. It was not a plea. It was a statement. I stopped. It was rare for anyone on the street to know my name, let alone address me with such calm authority. I turned slowly, annoyance flaring in my chest. I had 18 minutes before my first conference call. The man stepped out of the shadows. Up close, he smelled of rain and old paper, but not of neglect. There was a sharpness to him, a focus that unsettled me. He was not looking at my expensive shoes or my watch. He was looking directly into my eyes. "I do not have any cash today," I said, my voice clipped. I moved to turn away, dismissing the interruption as a nuisance. "I don't want your money," he said quietly. The pedestrian signal turned to a red hand, halting the flow of foot traffic, but I remained frozen on the curb. The man took a step closer, lowering his voice so that only I could hear him over the hiss of tires on wet pavement. "I just thought you should know that the equation is off." I frowned, my patience thinning. "Excuse me?" "Your wife," he said. "Linda." The sound of her name on his lips felt like a violation. A cold spike of adrenaline shot through me. "How do you know my wife's name?" "Who are you?" "It doesn't matter who I am," he replied, ignoring my rising anger. "What matters is where she is. She is not at her yoga studio. She doesn't go to the studio on Tuesdays." I laughed, a short, incredulous sound. "You are confused. My wife goes to Vinyasa Flow every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 10. She has done so for 3 years. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do." She gets into a car, he continued, his tone flat and relentless, as if he were reading a weather report. "A silver Mercedes. It picks her up on the corner of 4th and Pine at exactly 2:15 in the afternoon. Not 10 in the morning. 2:15. Every Tuesday for the last month. I stared at him. The specificity of the detail struck me harder than a physical blow. 4th and Pine was blocks away from her studio. And a silver Mercedes, it was a common car in this city. It meant nothing. This was just a man with too much time on his hands and a delusional mind. "You're insane," I spat out, stepping back. "Stay away from me. If you approach me again, I will call security." He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He just watched me with those unsettling, intelligent eyes. "I am not asking you to believe me, Mr. Evans. I am a ghost in this city. People look right through me. They say things and do things in front of me because they think I don't exist. But I see. I listen." I turned on my heel, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I needed to get away from him. I needed the sterile safety of my office, the logical rows of Excel sheets, the world where things made sense. "Just check the odometer," he called out after me. His voice was not loud, yet it cut through the noise of the traffic with terrifying precision. I froze. "Check the odometer," he repeated. "Do the math." I walked away without looking back. I walked faster than usual, pushing through the revolving doors of the lobby, nodding blindly at the receptionist, riding the elevator in a daze. I sat at my desk, staring at the dual monitors, but the numbers on the screen blurred into nonsense. Check the odometer. It was ridiculous. It was absurd. Linda loved me. We were happy. Last night, she had cooked her famous risotto, and we had talked about maybe taking a trip to the coast in the spring. She had laughed at my jokes. She had kissed me before I left this morning, her lips warm and familiar. A woman who was stepping into a silver Mercedes on 4th and Pine would not kiss her husband like that. But the seed had been planted. It was a small, dark thing, burrowing into the foundation of my certainty. I tried to work. I sat through the merger meeting, nodding at the appropriate times, throwing out buzzwords like synergy and risk mitigation, but my mind was miles away. I was calculating distances. From our house to the yoga studio was exactly 5.2 miles. A round trip was 10.4 miles. Linda rarely drove anywhere else on Tuesdays. She preferred to stay local, maybe stop at the organic grocer on the way back, which added perhaps another 2 miles. 12 miles. Maximum. I knew the mileage of her car. It was a habit, a compulsion of mine. I tracked the maintenance of our vehicles with the same rigor I applied to my client portfolios. I had taken her car in for an oil change just 3 days ago. I remembered the number on the intake form. 34,210. Since then, she had only driven to her mother's on Sunday and back. That was 20 miles. So, the odometer should read roughly 34,230. Plus today's trip. 34,242. If the number was significantly higher. I shook my head, forcing the thought away. It was an insult to her to even entertain the idea. It was a betrayal of our trust based on the ramblings of a stranger on a street corner. I buried myself in work, staying later than usual, punishing myself for my doubt. By the time I drove home, the rain had stopped, leaving the street slick and black under the streetlights. I pulled into the driveway, the garage door groaning as it lifted. Linda's car was parked in its usual spot, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. It looked innocent. It was just a machine of glass and steel. I parked beside it and sat in my car for a long moment, the engine ticking as it cooled. The house was quiet. I could see the warm glow of the kitchen light through the internal door. Linda would be in there, perhaps making tea, waiting for me. I got out of my car. My briefcase felt heavy in my hand. I walked toward the door to the house, my footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. I passed her car. I stopped. Just check the odometer. I looked at the driver's side window. It was tinted, reflecting my own distorted silhouette. I felt a wave of shame wash over me. This was my wife. This was my life. I shouldn't be doing this. I reached for the door handle. It was locked, of course. My keys were in my pocket. I hesitated, my fingers brushing the cold metal of the fob. If I unlocked it, the lights would flash. She might hear. She might come out and ask what I was doing. What would I say? That I was checking up on her? That I trusted a stranger more than I trusted her? I took a breath and pressed the unlock button. The chirp was deafening in the silence of the garage. I waited. The door to the house didn't open. No one came out. I opened the car door and leaned in. The scent of her perfume, vanilla and sandalwood, filled the cabin, familiar and comforting. It made my stomach turn. I inserted the key into the ignition and turned it just enough to wake the electronics, not starting the engine. The dashboard lit up. A digital display of amber numbers glowed in the dim light. I stared at them. I blinked, waiting for them to change, for them to rearrange themselves into the number I expected. The number that would prove I was a paranoid fool and that the man in the rain was a liar. The expected number, 34,242. Maybe 45, accounting for a D2. The number on the screen, 34,298. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands, gripping the steering wheel, went numb. 56 miles. She had driven 56 miles today. 12 miles for yoga. What about the other 44? I sat there, suspended in the amber glow, the math screaming at me. 44 miles. That wasn't a trip to the grocery store. That wasn't a detour for gas. That was a drive into the city and back. Or a drive to somewhere else entirely. Where did you go, Linda? I whispered to the empty car. The dashboard offered no answers. It simply displayed the cold, hard data. The equation was broken. The variable had changed. I turned off the ignition. The garage plunged back into semi-darkness. I sat there for a long time, the silence pressing in on my ears. My heart was beating a slow, heavy rhythm, a drum of dread. The sanctuary I thought I had built, the safety of my home, suddenly felt like a stage set. The walls were thin, the warmth was artificial. I remembered the man's eyes. Just check the odometer. He knew. A man who lived on the sidewalk, who possessed nothing but the clothes on his back, knew more about my marriage than I did. I got out of the car and closed the door quietly. I stood in the space between our vehicles, feeling untethered. I had to go inside. I had to walk into that kitchen, kiss my wife on the cheek, ask her about her day, and listen to her tell me about a yoga class she never attended. I had to smile. I had to pretend. But as I reached for the doorknob to the house, I knew that Mark Evans, the man who trusted numbers and believed in the stability of his world, had died in that garage. Something else was walking into the house in his place. Something colder. Something calculating. I opened the door and stepped into the warmth, the lie wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. "Honey, you're home." Linda's voice floated from the living room, bright and cheerful. "I'm home," I replied, my voice steady, though my hands were trembling. I closed the door behind me, locking it. But I knew, with the absolute certainty of a mathematical proof, that the real danger was already inside. Sleep is a luxury afforded to the innocent and the ignorant. I was neither. I lay awake in the master bedroom, staring at the ceiling where the shadows of rain-slick branches danced like skeletal fingers. Beside me, Linda breathed in a soft, rhythmic cadence, a sound that used to lull me into tranquility but now grated on my nerves like the ticking of a bomb. Every time she shifted, every time her hand brushed against my arm in her sleep, I flinched. The bed felt crowded, occupied not just by my wife and me, but by the colossal weight of the lie she had brought between us. I left the house before dawn. I could not stomach the charade of coffee and toast, the morning kiss, the casual inquiry about the day ahead. I left a note on the counter saying I had an early conference call with the London office. It was the first time I had ever lied to her in writing. It felt strangely easy, a simple transaction of deceit to balance her own account. The city was waking up, the grey light of morning filtering through the drizzle. I drove to the office on autopilot, my mind replaying the numbers on the odometer over and over again. 56 miles. The number was burned into my retinas. I parked in my reserved spot in the underground garage, the silence of the concrete bunker amplifying the ringing in my ears. I did not go up to the 42nd floor. Instead, I walked out to the street. I needed to find him. He was not at his usual corner. Panic, cold and sharp, pricked at my chest. What if he was gone? What if he was a hallucination, a manifestation of my own subconscious insecurities? I walked the perimeter of the block, my Italian leather shoes splashing through puddles, my eyes scanning every huddled form, every shadow. I found him 3 blocks away, sitting on a bench near a bus stop, reading a discarded newspaper. He looked different today, or perhaps I was just seeing him clearly for the first time. He wasn't just sitting, he was observing. His head moved with precise, economic turns, cataloguing the flow of people, the cars, the rhythm of the street. I approached him, my hand tightening around the envelope in my pocket. It contained $500 in cash. It was hush money. It was go-away money. I wanted to buy back my ignorance. "Mr. Evans," he said without looking up from the sports section. "You are 40 minutes early today." I stopped in front of him. The air between us felt charged, electric. "I want to know who you are," I said, keeping my voice low. "And I want you to take this and leave me alone." I extended the envelope. He finally looked up. His eyes were a startling shade of blue, clear and unclouded by the grime of the street. He looked at the envelope, then at my face, and a faint, dry smile touched his lips. "I told you yesterday, I don't want your money." "Everyone wants money," I snapped, my facade of control slipping. "Not everyone has lost what I have lost," he replied cryptically. "Money is just fuel. It burns and it's gone. I want something more permanent." He reached into the pocket of his oversized army jacket and pulled out a folded paper napkin. It was stained with coffee, but covered in neat, precise handwriting. He held it out to me. "Read it." I hesitated, then took the napkin. The handwriting was architectural, blocked and slanted. I began to read. 6:15 a.m. alarm disarmed, back door. Code 4922. 6:45 a.m. a coffee machine timer activates. 7:10 a.m. you leave via garage. Garage door signal frequency 315 MHz. Security system, Aegis Home Defense, Model X5. Default installer code never changed. Your routine is a straight line, Mark. Straight lines are easy to cut. I stared at the napkin, the blood draining from my face. The code 4922. That was our alarm code. It was Linda's birthday. How could he possibly know that? And the installer code? "Are you threatening me?" I whispered, crushing the napkin in my fist. "No," he said, standing up. He was taller than I expected, standing eye to eye with me. "I am showing you my resume. You think I am a beggar? I am a structural analyst. I used to secure buildings for people with net worths that make yours look like pocket change. I know how systems work. I know how people break them. And right now, someone is breaking your life apart." I looked at him, really looked at him. Beneath the layers of worn clothes and the unkempt beard, there was a posture of discipline. This man was not a drifter. He was a weapon that had been left out in the rain to rust. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "I want a way back," he said, his intensity dropping to a simmer. "I made a mistake years ago. A bad one. It cost me my clearance, my job, my family, everything. I fell off the grid. I want to climb back on. Not with charity. With work. He took a step closer. I will find the proof you need. I will document everything. The who, the when, the where. In exchange, when the dust settles, you give me a job. Entry-level security, night watchman, I don't care. Just a badge and a paycheck that isn't a handout. A job. It was an absurd request from a man living on a bench, yet it was the most logical thing I had heard in 24 hours. He didn't want a fish, he wanted the fishing rod. I took a deep breath, the cold morning air filling my lungs. I was a man of risk assessment. This was a high-risk asset. But my current position was vulnerable. I was blind, and he was offering me sight. I need a name, I said. Eli, he replied. Just Eli. Okay, Eli. I nodded, the decision made. What do you need? I need eyes that can record, he said. A smartphone. Prepaid. Nothing tied to you. Cash only. And a small budget for transportation. I will handle the rest. I walked to the nearest convenience store, my heart hammering a rhythm of rebellion. I was crossing a line. I was conspiring with a stranger against my wife. But every time guilt tried to rise, I saw the odometer. 34,298. I bought a cheap smartphone and a top-up card. I withdrew $300 from the ATM. When I returned to the bench, Eli was waiting. He took the phone with familiar, dexterous hands, popping the back cover and inserting the SIM card in seconds. He navigated the menus with a speed that betrayed his history. I will be a ghost, he said, pocketing the phone and the cash. Go to work. Act normal. If she calls, answer. If she says she loves you, say it back. Do not deviate from the script. I will contact you when I have something actionable. He turned and walked away, blending instantly into the morning commute crowd. One moment he was there, the next he was just another grey coat in a sea of grey coats. The rest of the day was a blur of torture. I sat in my office, surrounded by the mahogany and glass that used to signify my achievement, and felt like a fraud. I answered emails. I reviewed the tech merger files. But my mind was a split screen. On one side, the mundane tasks of corporate finance, on the other, the agonizing visualization of my wife. Where was she? Was she preparing for her fake yoga class? Was she picking out an outfit for him? At noon, my phone buzzed. It was Linda. Hey, sweetie, her voice chirped. I just wanted to see how your day is going. I'm just heading out to the studio. My hand gripped the phone so hard I thought the screen might crack. The lie was delivered with such effortless grace. Hey, I managed to say, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. It's busy. The London call ran long. Have a good session. Naymast. I felt a wave of nausea as I hung up. I had become a participant in the deception. I was lying to the liar. The hours dragged. The rain returned, lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office. I stared out at the city, wondering where Eli was. Was he standing in the rain again? Was he watching? At 2:30 p.m., the burner phone I had kept hidden in my jacket pocket vibrated. A single vibration. I locked my office door and pulled it out. There was a text message. No words. Just an image. It was grainy, taken through the rain and likely from a reflection in a shop window to avoid detection, but the subject was unmistakable. Linda. She was standing on the corner of 4th and Pine, just as Eli had said. She was wearing her trench coat, the belt cinched tight, looking impatiently at her watch. And then, a second photo arrived. A silver Mercedes had pulled up to the curb. Linda was reaching for the door handle. The angle was perfect. It captured the rear of the car, the taillights glowing red in the gloom, and clearly, undeniably, the license plate. WX794L. I stared at the plate number. It felt heavy, significant. I didn't recognize it instantly, but I had the tools to find out who it belonged to. I had access to databases that the general public did not. Risk management software, asset tracking, background checks, tools of the trade for high-level finance. I sat down at my computer, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I logged into the state vehicle registration portal through our firm's subscription. I typed in the plate number. WX794L. My heart was pounding in my throat. Who was he? A doctor? A lawyer? Someone she met at the gallery? The search wheel spun for a second that stretched into eternity. Then, the results populated the screen. Registered owner, ST Holdings, LLC. Address, 1200, Summit Avenue, Suite 4200. I stopped breathing. The address? 1200, Summit Avenue. That was this building. Summit Tower. ST Holdings. Summit Tower Holdings. It was a shell company, a holding entity used for corporate assets. This wasn't a stranger's car. It wasn't a personal vehicle. It was a fleet car. I navigated frantically to the internal company directory, accessing the fleet management log. My clearance allowed me to see the assignment of every corporate vehicle in the firm's garage. If the car belonged to the firm, it was assigned to a partner or a senior executive. I typed in the plate again. Vehicle, 2024 Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Status, active assigned. Assigned to Miller, Gavin. The world tilted on its axis. Gavin. Gavin Miller. The name echoed in the silence of my office like a gunshot. Gavin was not just a colleague. He was the man sitting 3 offices down the hall. We had started at the firm in the same year. We had celebrated promotions together. We had played squash on Thursdays. He had been to my house for Christmas dinner. He had poured wine for Linda and complimented her cooking. Gavin, with his charming smile, his perfectly tailored suits, and his ambition that rivaled my own. I felt a physical blow to my gut, a mixture of betrayal and humiliation so potent it nearly doubled me over. It wasn't just an affair. It was incestuous. It was happening right under my nose, in my own territory. He was driving a car paid for by the company we both worked for, to pick up my wife, while I sat at my desk reviewing spreadsheets. A knock on my door made me jump. I minimized the window instantly, my heart rate spiking. Mark? You in there? It was him. The voice was muffled by the heavy oak door, but it was unmistakable. Smooth, confident, slightly amused. Gavin. I stared at the door handle. It began to turn. I had locked it, thank God. Mark? Open up, buddy. I need your sign-off on the Delta file. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. If I opened that door, I didn't know what I would do. I looked at the silver letter opener on my desk. A primitive, violent thought flashed through my mind, red and raw. No. I closed my eyes and took a breath that rattled in my chest. I needed to be smarter. Eli had said straight lines are easy to cut. I couldn't attack him head-on. Not yet. He had taken my wife. He was driving a company car. He was arrogant. And arrogance was a flaw in the equation. I forced my voice to work. It came out rough, strained. On a call, Gavin. Give me 20 minutes. All right, don't bite my head off, came the muffled reply, followed by a chuckle. Catch you later. I heard his footsteps recede down the hallway. The sound of his expensive shoes on the plush carpet. Walking away. Walking toward the elevator. Walking toward the garage. Walking toward her. I looked back at the screen, at the name Miller, Gavin. The glitch in the equation wasn't random. It was a virus. And it was already inside the system. I picked up the burner phone and typed a single message to Eli. Target identified. It's worse than we thought. He's inside. I set the phone down and stared at my reflection in the black monitor. The Mark Evans looking back at me was pale, his eyes wide with shock. But beneath the shock, something new was hardening. A cold resolve. I wasn't just checking the odometer anymore. I was checking the war chest. And I was going to bankrupt them both. The air in the office felt recycled, stale, and thick with invisible currents of treachery. I sat at my desk, the ergonomic chair that once felt like a throne now feeling more like a cage. My hands rested on the polished mahogany surface, fingers splayed, trying to absorb the coolness of the wood to temper the heat rising in my blood. Gavin Miller was 3 doors down. I could hear his laugh drifting down the hallway, a booming, confident sound that used to signal camaraderie but now sounded like the sharpening of a blade. Every time footsteps approached my door, my muscles coiled tight. I expected him to walk in, to clap me on the shoulder, to ask about my weekend plans with the wife he was stealing from me. The duplicity was not just a personal affront, it was a professional violation. We were fiduciaries. We were supposed to be the guardians of trust. And here he was embezzling my life. I needed air. I needed clarity. I stood up, grabbing my coat, and walked out of the office, bypassing the elevators and taking the stairs down 42 flights. The physical exertion was necessary. I needed to feel the burn in my legs to distract from the hollow ache in my chest. By the time I reached the lobby, my breathing was heavy, but my mind was sharper. I met Eli in the back alley behind a Chinese restaurant 2 blocks away. It was a grim location, smelling of wet cardboard and frying oil, but it was private. Eli was leaning against a dumpster, wearing a faded blue utility jumpsuit he must have scavenged or bought at a thrift store. It made him look less like a vagrant and more like a tired janitor taking a smoke break. "You look terrible," Eli said as I approached. His assessment was clinical, devoid of sympathy. "He is inside," I said, my voice rasping. "It is Gavin. Gavin Miller. He works down the hall." "I know," Eli replied calm. "I ran the plates. I did a background check on him while you were pushing pencils. Yale graduate, aggressive portfolio growth, 2 lawsuits for breach of contract that were settled out of court and sealed. He is a climber. And climbers do not care who they step on." I paced the small strip of asphalt, kicking at a loose stone. "I cannot just sit there, Eli. I have to do something. I have to confront him. I have to tell the partners." "And tell them what?" Eli asked, stepping forward to block my path. "That your wife is having an affair? That is tragic, Mark, but it is not a corporate crime. Unless you have proof that impacts the firm, you just look like a jealous husband causing a scene. You will be the liability, not him." I stopped. He was right. The logic was cold, but it was sound. "So what do we do?" I asked, feeling the helplessness wash over me again. "We escalate," Eli said. "We move from surveillance to intelligence gathering. Pictures of a car are not enough. We need to know what they are planning. People like Gavin and your wife, they do not just meet for romance. If he is driving a company car, if he is risking his career, there is an endgame. We need to hear it." He pulled a small, black device from his pocket. It looked like a button, no larger than a dime. "Audio surveillance," he explained. "High fidelity, decent range. They are meeting tonight at Le Sile. It is that French place on the top of the industrial tower. Very expensive. Very private." "I know it," I said bitterly. "I took Linda there for our 5th anniversary." "Perfect," Eli nodded. "Then you know the layout. I need to get this under their table." "You cannot just walk into Le Sile," I said, shaking my head. "They have a maître d' who spots cheap suits from a mile away. You will never get past the host stand." Eli smiled, a slow, wolfish expression that showed teeth. "I am not going in as a patron, Mark. I am going in as part of the scenery. Nobody looks at the help. The plan was insane. It was reckless. If he was caught, if the police were called, everything would unravel. But I looked at Eli, at the steady set of his jaw, and I realized he had done this 1,000 times before. He was in his element. The ghost was preparing to haunt. I spent the evening in my car, parked in a dark lot 3 streets away from the restaurant tower. The rain had returned, drumming a relentless rhythm on the roof. I had the burner phone in my hand, connected to a pair of noise-cancelling headphones. Eli had synced the bug to the phone via a secure app. The wait was agonizing. Every minute felt like an hour. I imagined Eli trying to slip through the service entrance, dodging chefs and waiters. I imagined Linda and Gavin arriving, the valet taking the keys to the silver Mercedes, the Metro D showing them to the corner table with the view of the city lights. The city I helped build. The city they were using as a backdrop for their betrayal. At 8:15 p.m., the app signaled a connection. A burst of static filled my ears, followed by the clinking of silverware and the low hum of ambient conversation. Audio clear, Eli's voice came through, a whisper. I am in the service corridor. Devices planted. Table 4. They are being seated now. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pressed the headphones tighter to my ears, closing my eyes. Thank you, Pierre, I heard Linda's voice. It was smooth, honeyed, the voice she used when she wanted something. Of course, Madam Evans. Enjoy your evening. The scraping of chairs. The rustle of fabric. Silence for a moment, heavy and intimate. You look incredible, Gavin said. His voice was lower, huskier than it was in the office. It made my skin crawl. Stop it, Linda giggled. A sound I hadn't heard in years. We have things to discuss. Later, Gavin murmured. Let's order first. The wine list here is decent. I sat in the dark car, gripping the steering wheel, forced to listen to my wife flirt with my colleague. I heard them order. I heard them discuss the weather, the art gallery, the tediousness of the weather. It was mundane, sickeningly normal. I was about to tear the headphones off, unable to stomach the banality of their evil, when the tone changed. Did he sign the transfer? Linda asked. Her voice dropped an octave. It was no longer the voice of a lover. It was the voice of a conspirator. Not yet, Gavin replied. I heard the clink of a glass being set down. I need to time it right. The quarterly audit is next week. I need to slip the authorization into the stack for the Delta merger. He is so focused on the tech deal, he barely reads the appendices anymore. He trusts me. My eyes snapped open. The Delta merger. I had been working on that for months. It has to be done by the 1st of the month, Gavin, Linda insisted. The prenup has a vesting clause. If we divorce before the 5-year mark, I get a capped settlement. But if his assets are frozen due to criminal investigation. The prenup is void, Gavin finished for her. And since the accounts will be in his name, under his digital signature, the liabilities are his. You file for divorce citing irreconcilable differences and distress caused by his illicit financial activities. You play the victim. The innocent wife who had no idea her husband was laundering money through offshore shell companies. I stopped breathing. The air in the car suddenly felt too thin. Laundering money. This was not just an affair. This was a frame-up. Are you sure it will stick? Linda asked. Mark is meticulous. You know that. He checks everything. He checks the numbers he thinks are real, Gavin scoffed. He is arrogant, Linda. He thinks he is the smartest guy in the room. He won't look for a shadow account attached to the client holdings. I have already set up the routing. The funds from the non-existent consulting firms will flow into his personal portfolio, stay there for 24 hours, and then vanish into the crypto exchange. But the digital footprint will remain. It will look like he is skimming from the top. And the insurance? Linda asked. Full payout, Gavin said. Crime policy covers spousal theft if the spouse is unaware. You get the house, the clean assets, and the insurance settlement. Mark gets an indictment and a 10-year vacation in federal prison. And I get the vacant partner seat once the dust settles. Silence. Then, the sound of glasses clinking. To the future, Linda said softly. To us, Gavin replied. I tore the headphones off my head and threw them onto the passenger seat. I felt like I was going to be sick. I opened the car door and leaned out into the rain, gasping for air. The world was spinning. They weren't just sleeping together. They were planning to destroy me. They were going to take my life, my reputation, my freedom, and leave me to rot while they spent my money. Linda, the woman I had vowed to protect. Gavin, the man I had mentored. It was a cold, calculated execution. And I had been walking right into it, blind and smiling. I sat back in the seat, the rain soaking my shoulder, shivering uncontrollably. Fear was gone. Sadness was gone. In their place was a cold, hard singularity of purpose. The passenger door opened. I jumped, reaching for the tire iron I kept under the seat, but it was Eli. He slipped into the car, bringing the smell of rain and kitchen grease with him. He looked calm, unruffled. You heard? He asked. I nodded, unable to speak. Good, Eli said. Now you know the stakes. It is not about love, Mark. It is about leverage. He pulled a small tablet from his jumpsuit. While I was in the back, I took the liberty of accessing the restaurant's Wi-Fi. I piggybacked onto the guest network and managed to get a look at Gavin's phone traffic when it connected. He is using a private server for his emails. Sloppy. He thinks he is untouchable. What do we do? I whispered. My voice sounded dead. We do not react, Eli said firmly. If you confront them now, they will scrub the data. They will delete the accounts. They will deny everything, and it will be your word against theirs. And right now, you look like the unstable husband. He turned to me, his blue eyes fierce in the darkness. We have to let them do it. What? I stared at him. You want me to let him frame me? I want you to let him initiate the sequence, Eli corrected. We need the transaction to start. We need the digital fingerprint of him moving the money. But we need to divert it before it hits your account. We need to catch the bullet in mid-air and fire it back. How? I asked. I am a financial analyst, Eli, not a hacker. No, Eli said. But you have his access codes. You have his trust. And you have me. He looked out the windshield at the towering silhouette of the skyscraper where my wife and her lover were toasting to my destruction. Tomorrow, he said, you are going to ask Gavin for a favor. You are going to ask him to handle a sensitive file for you. You are going to give him the rope. And then, we are going to watch him hang himself. But first, Eli continued, his voice dropping low. You have to go home. You have to climb into that bed. You have to lie next to her. And you have to not kill her. Can you do that? I thought about Linda's laugh. I thought about the way she looked at me when we said our vows. I thought about the calculation in her voice when she asked about the insurance money. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The Mark Evans who loved his wife was gone. The man sitting in the car was a hollow shell, filled with cold rain and colder resolve. I can do it, I said. Then drive, Eli said. The game has changed. We are not hunting anymore. We are setting a trap. I started the engine. The wipers sliced back and forth, clearing the view for a fraction of a second before the rain obscured it again. It was enough. I could see the road ahead. It was dark, and it was dangerous, but for the first time in days, I knew exactly where I was going. I drove Eli back to his spot near the bus stop. He got out without a word, disappearing into the shadows as if he had never been there. I drove home. The house was dark when I arrived. Linda was not back yet. I went inside, disarmed the alarm code 4922 and walked into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady. I went upstairs to the bedroom. I took off my clothes, folding them neatly on the chair. I brushed my teeth. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes looked older. Harder. I got into bed and pulled the covers up to my chin. I lay there in the darkness, waiting. An hour later, I heard the garage door open. I heard her footsteps on the stairs. The bedroom door opened softly. "Mark?" she whispered. I didn't move. I kept my breathing slow and even. She crept into the room, smelling of rain and expensive wine and deceit. She slipped into the bed beside me. Her body was warm. She settled in, her back to me, and sighed a content, sleepy sigh. "Good night, my love," she murmured into the pillow. I stared at the back of her head. I imagined the thoughts swirling in her brain, the plans, the numbers, the anticipation of my ruin. "Good night, Linda," I said in my mind. "Sleep well. Because when you wake up, the nightmare begins." The art of deception, I discovered, is not about creating a false reality. It is about letting the other person believe their own lies. I woke up that Wednesday morning with a strange, cold clarity. The panic that had gripped me in the garage, the nausea that had nearly floored me outside the restaurant, was gone. It had been replaced by a mechanical precision. I was no longer Mark Evans, the loving husband and diligent employee. I was a machine designed for a single function: survival. I dressed in the dark, selecting my suit with the same care a soldier might choose his armor. Navy blue, crisp white shirt, a tie with a subtle geometric pattern. I looked in the mirror. The face staring back was familiar, yet the eyes were different. They were guarded, flat, reflecting nothing. I practiced a smile. It felt tight, unnatural, but it would have to do. Downstairs, the house was quiet. Linda was still asleep, or pretending to be. I moved through the kitchen, the granite countertops gleaming under the under-cabinet lighting. This house, which I had worked so hard to buy, which I had filled with things to make her happy, now felt like a museum of my own stupidity. Every vase, every painting, every piece of furniture was a testament to my blindness. I made coffee, the machine hissing in the silence. I poured 2 cups. I left one on her bedside table, a peace offering from a man she thought she had already defeated. I did not kiss her goodbye. I could not bring myself to touch her skin, knowing where she had been, knowing what she was planning. I drove to the office in silence. The rain had paused, leaving the city washed in a pale, watery sunlight that offered no warmth. I parked in the garage, 3 spots away from the silver Mercedes. I looked at it as I walked by. It was just a car. Metal, rubber, glass. But it was also the weapon they were using to dismantle my life. Eli met me in the lobby. He was not wearing his jumpsuit today. He was dressed in a nondescript grey slack and a sweater, carrying a clipboard. He looked like any number of maintenance coordinators or facilities staff that roamed the building unnoticed. He fell in step beside me as I walked toward the elevators, keeping a respectful distance that suggested he was escorting me or receiving instructions. "Did you swap the file?" he asked, his voice low, barely moving his lips. "I have it in my briefcase," I replied, looking straight ahead. "Are you sure this will work?" "It is a classic bait and switch, Mark. Gavin relies on digital templates." He printed the authorization form using the standard firm letterhead, but he embedded a routing number that links to the shadow account. "The pages I gave you look identical. Same font, same weight of paper, same letterhead. But the routing number in the fine print? It goes to an escrow account monitored by the SEC for suspicious activity. And when I sign it?" "When you sign it, you are not authorizing a theft. You are authorizing a flagged transaction. As soon as he processes it, the system will freeze the funds and generate an automatic report to the compliance officer. But here is the key: The report will show that the originator of the transaction request was him, not you. I nodded, my grip on the briefcase tightening. It was risky. If Gavin looked too closely, if he checked the routing number manually, we were finished. He is arrogant, Eli reminded me, as if reading my thoughts. He thinks you are a fool. He won't check. He just wants your signature. We reached the elevator bank. Eli peeled away, heading toward the service bay. Good luck, Mr. Evans, he said aloud, for the benefit of the security guard at the desk. I rode the elevator up alone. My heart was beating a slow, heavy rhythm. I walked into my office, hung up my coat, and sat down. I turned on my computer. I opened my email. I started my day. At 10:30 a.m., the knock came. Mark? Got a minute? It was Gavin. He sounded relaxed, breezy. I swiveled my chair around. He was standing in the doorway, holding a thick manila folder. He was wearing a charcoal suit, impeccable as always. He smiled. It was the smile of a predator who thinks the prey is asleep. Hey, Gavin. Come in. He walked in and closed the door behind him. He sat on the edge of my desk, a violation of personal space that he knew I usually tolerated. Listen, I am swamped with the Delta due diligence, he said, running a hand through his hair. The partners are breathing down my neck to get the preliminary asset transfer authorized before the weekend. I know you are the lead on the tech merger, but could you do me a solid and sign off on the liquidity release? It is standard stuff, just moving the capital into the holding bucket so we can execute on Monday. He slid the folder across the desk. Here is the stack. The authorization page is tabbed. I looked at the folder. This was it. The Trojan horse. Sure, I said, keeping my voice even. I can take a look. You are a lifesaver, he said, checking his watch. I have a lunch meeting with the auditors. If you could get that back to me by noon, I owe you a drink. A drink, I thought. Or a prison sentence. No problem, I said. Leave it with me. He hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. He wanted to watch me sign it. He wanted to be sure. It is just one signature, Mark, he pressed gently. Take 2 seconds. Then I can get it out of your hair. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. I felt a surge of cold anger, but I forced it down, channeling it into professional stubbornness. Gavin, you know the protocol. I don't sign anything without reading the preamble. Especially with the Delta file. The liability clauses are a nightmare. He laughed, but his eyes tightened slightly. You are such a Boy Scout, Evans. Fine. Read the preamble. But don't take all day. He stood up and walked to the door. Noon, Mark. Don't leave me hanging. As soon as the door clicked shut, I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. My hands were shaking. I placed them flat on the desk until the tremors stopped. I opened the folder. It was thick, filled with legal jargon and financial tables. I flipped to the tab page. Transfer authorization. Amount, $5 million. From Client Omnibus Fund. To Estate Consulting Group. Estate Consulting. The shell company. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the single sheet of paper Eli had given me. It was a masterpiece of forgery. It was identical to the page in front of me in every way, except for 8 digits at the bottom of the page. I listened for footsteps in the hall. Silence. I removed the page Gavin had given me. I fed it into the shredder beneath my desk. The machine whirred for a second, devouring the evidence of his crime. I placed Eli's page into the folder, aligning it perfectly with the other documents. I took my fountain pen. I signed my name at the bottom. Mark A. Evans. The trap was set. I waited 10 minutes. Then I walked down the hall to Gavin's office. He was on the phone, laughing. When he saw me, he covered the mouthpiece. "Done?" he asked. "Signed and sealed," I said, dropping the folder on his desk. "You are the man, Mark." "Seriously?" I walked back to my office, feeling lightheaded. I had just authorized a transaction that would trigger a federal investigation. But the target wasn't the fund. The target was Gavin. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I felt detached, floating above the office floor. I saw my colleagues, people I had worked with for years, and wondered if they saw the invisible noose tightening around the neck of the man in the corner office. At 5 p.m., I packed my bag. I needed to go home. I needed to face Linda. The drive home was surreal. I stopped at a florist and bought a bouquet of white lilies. They were her favorite. They were also the flowers of funerals. The irony was not lost on me. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was there. The silver Mercedes. I parked beside it. I walked to the front door, the flowers in my hand. I unlocked the door. Linda was in the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove. She turned when I entered, a look of mild surprise on her face. "Flowers?" she asked, wiping her hands on a towel. "What is the occasion?" I walked over to her. I handed her the bouquet. I leaned in and kissed her cheek. Her skin was cool. She smelled of wine. "Just because," I said. "I have been distracted lately. Work has been intense. I wanted to show you I appreciate you." She took the flowers, her eyes searching mine. She was looking for a crack in the facade. She was looking for the husband who suspected something. "That is sweet, Mark," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you." She turned to put the flowers in a vase. I noticed her hand was trembling slightly. I loosened my tie and poured myself a glass of wine from the open bottle on the counter. "How was your day?" I asked, taking a sip. The wine was bitter. "Oh, you know," she said, her back to me. "The gallery is busy. We have the opening next week. A lot of logistics." "Right," I said. "The opening. I am looking forward to it." She turned around, leaning against the counter. "You seem different tonight, Mark." "Different?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "How so?" "I don't know. You seem calm. Too calm. Usually when you are in the middle of a merger, you are a ball of stress. You pace. You check your email every 5 minutes. Tonight, you are just standing there." I took another sip of wine. I looked at her over the rim of the glass. "Maybe I realized that some things are more important than work, Linda. Maybe I realized that I need to focus on my future." She froze. The word future hung in the air between us. "What do you mean?" she asked sharply. "I mean us," I lied smoothly. "Our future. I want to make sure we are set. In fact, I was thinking we should review our portfolio this weekend. Make sure everything is in order." Her eyes widened. This was not part of her script. She wanted me distracted, not involved. "Oh, I don't think that is necessary," she said quickly. "You work so hard. Let's just relax this weekend." I smiled. A shark smile. "We will see." I walked into the living room, leaving her in the kitchen. I could feel her eyes boring into my back. I sat on the sofa and turned on the television, staring at the news without seeing it. 10 minutes later, Linda walked past the living room. "I am going to take a shower before dinner," she announced. "Okay," I said without turning around. I waited until I heard her footsteps on the stairs. I waited until I heard the water running in the master bathroom upstairs. Then I moved. I walked into the kitchen. Her purse was on the counter. I opened it. Her phone was inside. It was locked, of course. But I knew her passcode. It was our anniversary. 1014, I typed it in. The phone unlocked. I went to her messages. The most recent thread was with a contact named G. Gavin. I read the last message she had sent, just minutes ago, while I was in the living room. He is acting strange. He brought me flowers. He is talking about the future and checking the portfolio. I think he knows something. We need to pause. Do not process the transfer. My heart hammered against my ribs. She was smart. She had sensed the shift in the atmosphere. If Gavin saw this, he wouldn't execute the transaction on Monday. He would shred the document I signed. The trap would fail. I looked at the time of the message. Sent 2 minutes ago. Status, delivered. Not read yet. I needed to intercept it. I needed to negate it. I hesitated. This was the point of no return. This was the invasion of privacy that could not be undone. But then I remembered the conversation in the car. The prenup is void. 10-year vacation in federal prison. I typed a response. I tried to mimic her tone. Ignore that. I am just paranoid. He is just trying to be nice because he feels guilty about working late. He is clueless. Go ahead with the plan. I want this over with. I hit send. I watched the screen. The message bubble turned blue. Then, 3 dots appeared. Gavin was typing. You almost gave me a heart attack, babe. Good. The paperwork is signed. Monday morning, we are rich. And he is history. I stared at the words. He is history. I deleted my message. I deleted her message. I deleted his reply. I left the thread exactly as it had been before she went into the kitchen. I locked the phone and put it back in her purse. I walked back to the living room and sat down. My heart was racing so fast I thought it might explode. I forced myself to breathe. In. Out. In. Out. I heard the water stop upstairs. I had just played God with our timeline. I had just authorized my own destruction in their eyes, while ensuring their destruction in reality. Linda came downstairs 20 minutes later. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair wet. She looked beautiful. She looked like the woman I had married. Did you check your phone? I asked, keeping my voice casual. No, why? She asked, a flicker of panic in her eyes. I thought I heard it buzz, I said. She walked into the kitchen. I watched her from the doorway. She took her phone out of her purse. She unlocked it. She stared at the screen. I held my breath. Had I missed something? Had I left a trace? She relaxed visibly. She put the phone down. Nothing important, she said. Just spam. She turned to me and smiled. A genuine smile this time, born of relief. She thought she was safe. She thought the plan was still on. Dinner is almost ready, she said. I made your favorite. Lasagna. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who was planning to send me to prison so she could run away with my colleague. I am starving, I said. And I was. I was starving for justice. We sat down at the table. We ate. We talked about the weather. We talked about the news. We played our parts in the domestic theater. But under the table, my leg was bouncing. Monday. Monday was the day the world would burn. And I was the one holding the match. The skyscraper at night was a different beast entirely. By day, Summit Tower was a hive of commerce, buzzing with the energy of ambitious men and women chasing the next decimal point. But at 2 a.m, it was a monolith of silence, a tomb of glass and steel rising into the black Seattle sky. The only sound was the low, subsonic hum of the fax system, breathing like a sleeping giant. I stood by the service entrance on the loading dock level, checking my watch for the 10th time in a minute. My hands were sweating inside my leather gloves. I had unauthorized access to the building. Of course, my keycard worked 24 hours a day, but bringing an undocumented guest into the secure server core was a violation of every protocol I had sworn to uphold. If we were caught, there would be no explanation that could save me. I would be fired, likely prosecuted for corporate espionage, and Gavin would win without lifting a finger. A shadow detached itself from the darkness of the alley. Eli moved with a silence that was almost unnatural. He was wearing the grey maintenance uniform we had procured, a generic jumpsuit that rendered him invisible to the casual observer. He carried a tool bag slung over his shoulder. To anyone watching the security cameras, he was just a contractor coming in to fix a leaky pipe or a faulty circuit. "You are late," I whispered, though he was exactly on time. Traffic was terrible, he deadpanned, his eyes scanning the perimeter. "The keypad?" I swiped my badge and punched in the code. The light turned green. The heavy steel door clicked open. We stepped inside, and the smell of the city rain was instantly replaced by the sterile scent of floor wax and recycled air. We moved quickly. I knew the patrol schedules of the night security team. We had a 12-minute window before the guard on the third floor made his rounds past the elevator bank. We took the freight elevator, the metal box groaning softly as it ascended. I watched the numbers climb. Lobby. 10. 20. 40. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat that seemed too loud in the confined space. I looked at Eli. He was calm, his face impassive. He was looking at the inspection certificate on the elevator wall, as if he were actually here to check the hydraulics. "Relax, Mark," he said softly. "You are radiating anxiety. It smells like ozone." "I am breaking into my own company," I hissed. "You are not breaking in," he corrected. "You are conducting an unscheduled audit." The elevator dinged at the 42nd floor. The door slid open. The hallway was dim, lit only by the emergency track lighting along the floor. The executive suites were dark caves on either side. We walked past my office. We walked past Gavin's office. I resisted the urge to look at his door. The server room was at the end of the hall, behind a door that required biometric authentication. This was the hurdle I had worried about. My clearance got me into the building, but the server room was restricted to IT administration and senior partners. I was a senior analyst, not a partner. Not yet. Eli knelt by the keypad. He didn't touch it. He pulled a small device from his bag, something that looked like a modified tablet with a bundle of wires protruding from the side. "Do not touch the scanner," he warned. "It logs the print." I watched as he worked. His fingers were nimble, flying over the interface of his device. He wasn't bypassing the lock, he was tricking it. "The system is on a looped query cycle," he murmured, more to himself than to me. "It asks the central database if the ID is valid every 3 seconds. If I can inject a ghost signal in the gap between queries." There was a soft chirp. The light on the door turned green. "After you," he said. We slipped inside. The server room was cold, kept at a constant temperature to protect the banks of machines that lined the walls like monoliths. Blue and green lights blinked in the darkness, a constellation of data. The hum here was louder, a physical vibration that rattled in my teeth. This was the brain of the firm. Every trade, every email, every secret was stored here, spinning on magnetic platters. Eli didn't waste time. He moved to the main terminal, a workstation isolated in the center of the room. He sat down and pulled a keyboard from the rack. He didn't look like a homeless man anymore. In the glow of the monitors, with his hands dancing over the keys, he looked like a maestro. I stood by the door, keeping watch through the small reinforced window. The hallway remained empty. But the silence felt heavy, pregnant with the threat of discovery. "I am in," Eli said. His voice was tight. I walked over to him. "What do you see?" He pointed at the screen. Lines of code were scrolling past, a waterfall of white text on a black background. "Gavin is not just arrogant," Eli said, a note of disgust in his voice. He is lazy. He installed a logic bomb. It is a script designed to execute at a specific time. See this timestamp? Monday 9 a.m. That is when the markets open, I said. Exactly. The script will take the authorization you signed, the one with the flagged routing number, and push it through the system. But here is the clever part. He added a masking layer. To the internal auditors, it will look like the command came from your terminal, using your encryption key. Can you stop it? I asked. Eli chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Stop it? Mark, I can do better than stop it. This code. I know this code. He leaned closer to the screen, his eyes narrowing. This is a modification of the Cerberus protocol. It is a piece of spyware that circulated in the intelligence community about 10 years ago. It was designed to siphon data from foreign servers without leaving a footprint. How do you know that? I asked. Because I wrote the original source code, he said quietly. I stared at him. The man who slept on a bench, who ate from soup kitchens, had written the software that my wife's lover was using to frame me. The coincidence was staggering, but then, perhaps it wasn't. The world of high-level security was small. Tools were recycled, sold, stolen. He bought a bootleg version on the dark web, Eli continued, his fingers flying. He thinks it is a master key. He does not know it has a back door. What are you doing? I am rewriting the target destination, Eli said. The script is designed to send the stolen funds to his shell company and the theft report to the shredder. I am changing the pointers. The funds will still move, triggering the alarm. But instead of masking the source, the script will strip away the spoofing. It will reveal the true IP address of the originator. His laptop. And the report? I am hard-coding a new recipient list, Eli said, typing furiously. The moment the transaction executes, a full forensic packet will be emailed to the CEO, the head of compliance, and the cybercrimes division of the FBI. He hit the enter key with a flourish. The screen flashed once, then returned to the standard login prompt. It is done, he said, standing up. The bomb is still ticking. But now, it is under his chair, not yours. We need to go, I said. The guard is due on this floor in 4 minutes. We packed up. Eli wiped the keyboard with a microfiber cloth, removing any trace of his touch. We exited the server room, the lock clicking shut behind us with a finality that echoed in the empty hall. We were halfway to the freight elevator when I heard it. The chime of the main elevator. I froze. I grabbed Eli's arm and pulled him into the alcove of the executive restroom. We pressed ourselves against the wall, holding our breath. Footsteps. Heavy, rhythmic. The jingle of keys. It was the guard. He was early. I could hear the crackle of his radio. The footsteps came closer. They slowed as they passed the restroom door. I saw the beam of a flashlight sweep across the floor of the hallway, slicing through the darkness. The light lingered on the carpet just inches from where we stood. If he decided to check the stalls. I looked at Eli. He had a small, heavy wrench in his hand. His eyes were hard. He was prepared to do what was necessary to protect me, to protect the mission. The thought made my stomach turn. I did not want violence. I wanted justice. The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched, agonizing and thin. Then, the radio crackled again. Control, this is Unit 4. Level 42 is clear. Proceeding to 43. Copy that, Unit 4. The footsteps resumed, fading away toward the stairwell. I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in my lungs for an hour. Eli lowered the wrench, his muscles relaxing. Too close, he whispered. We moved fast. We made it to the freight elevator and descended to the loading dock. We slipped out the side door into the alley. The cold night air hit me like a slap. I fell against the brick wall, my legs suddenly trembling. The adrenaline crash was brutal. "We did it," I said, looking up at the sky. "We armed the weapon," Eli corrected. "Now we just have to wait for him to pull the trigger." I drove Eli back to his spot. The city was sleeping, unaware of the war that had just been decided in the silence of a server room. When I got home, the house was dark. I crept into bed, careful not to wake Linda. I lay there, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the code Eli had written. I thought about the unseen currents of data flowing through the wires, carrying my salvation and Gavin's doom. I turned my head and looked at my wife. She was sleeping deeply, a faint smile on her lips. She was probably dreaming of the money, of the freedom, of the life she thought she was about to steal. "Sleep tight, Linda," I thought. Monday is coming. And for the first time in weeks, I closed my eyes and slept the sleep of the righteous. Monday arrived not with a roar, but with a whisper. The markets opened at 9 in the morning, a digital symphony of buy and sell orders flooding the servers. I sat at my desk, a cup of coffee cooling untouched beside my hand, watching the clock on my monitor. The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness. 9:00. 9:01. Down the hall, I imagined Gavin leaning back in his expensive leather chair, watching the transfer initiation. He would see the numbers move. He would see the authorization code, my authorization code, flash green. He would believe that $5 million was currently being siphoned from the client omnibus fund into his shell company, disguised as a consulting fee. He would be smiling. He would be thinking about the commission, the promotion, and my wife. He did not know that the code Eli had rewritten was currently stripping away every layer of encryption he had built. He did not know that an email had just landed in the inbox of the Chief Executive Officer, the Head of Compliance, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I waited for the shout. I waited for the sound of running feet, for the alarm. But the corporate world does not scream when it is wounded. It reacts with silence. At 10 o'clock, Gavin walked past my office. He caught my eye and gave me a subtle thumbs up. A wink. It was a gesture of conspiracy, a silent acknowledgement that our transaction was complete. I smiled back. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. "See you tonight," he said, pausing at the door. "Linda is nervous about the gallery opening. She wants us all there for support." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied. The day proceeded with an eerie normalcy. But underneath the surface, the gears were turning. I saw the head of compliance walk briskly toward the executive elevator, his face pale. I saw two men in dark suits enter the building and bypass the reception desk, escorted by the CEO's assistant. They didn't go to Gavin's office. Not yet. They went to the conference room on the top floor. They were building the case. They were verifying the data packet Eli had sent them. I left the office at 5. I went home to change. Linda was already gone, having spent the day preparing for the gala. The house was empty. I put on my tuxedo. I adjusted my bow tie in the mirror. I looked like a man going to a celebration. And I was. The gallery was located in the Arts District, a renovated warehouse with high ceilings and exposed brick walls. When I arrived, the space was already filled with the city's elite. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne. Soft jazz played in the background. The walls were lined with abstract paintings that cost more than most people earned in a year. Linda was in the center of the room, holding court. She wore a shimmering silver dress that matched the car she used to betray me. She looked radiant. When she saw me, she glided over, slipping her arm through mine. "You made it," she said, kissing my cheek. Her lips were cold. "I told you I would," I said. "Where is Gavin?" "He is by the bar," she whispered. "He said everything went smoothly this morning." "Excellent," I said. I looked across the room. Gavin was holding a glass of scotch, laughing with a group of potential investors. He looked like a king in his castle. The evening wore on. I shook hands. I made small talk. I played the role of the supportive husband. But my eyes kept darting to the entrance. I was waiting for the guests of honor. At 8 o'clock, Linda tapped a spoon against her glass. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice projecting effortlessly. "This gallery has been a dream of mine for years. But dreams don't happen in a vacuum. They happen because of support. I want to thank my husband, Mark, for believing in me." Applause rippled through the room. I stepped forward, a polite smile plastered on my face. "And," Linda continued, "I want to invite our dear friend and patron, Gavin Miller, to say a few words." Gavin stepped up to the small podium, beaming. He accepted the microphone. "Thank you, Linda. It is an honor to be here. We are all about vision tonight. Seeing what others cannot see." I stepped up beside him. I gently took the microphone from his hand. "Actually, Gavin," I said, my voice amplified through the speakers, "I think I would like to say a few words about vision as well." Gavin looked surprised, but he stepped back, maintaining his composure. "Go ahead, Mark," he said magnanimously. I looked out at the crowd. I saw faces I knew. Friends. Colleagues. Competitors. "Vision is a funny thing," I began. "We think we see the world clearly. We think we know the people closest to us. But sometimes, we are looking at a painting, and we miss the forgery." I pulled a small remote from my pocket. I had connected my phone to the gallery's audio-visual system earlier, under the guise of testing the slideshow for Linda. "I want to share a piece of art with you all tonight," I said. "It is a piece about realism. It is called The Transaction." I pressed the button. The large projection screen behind me, which had been displaying a loop of abstract art, flickered. The image changed. It was not a painting. It was a video. Grainy, black and white, but unmistakably clear. It was the interior of a car. The timestamp in the corner read Tuesday 2:15 p.m. The camera angle was from the dashboard looking in. It showed a man and a woman. Gavin Miller and Linda Evans. The room went deadly silent. The jazz music had stopped. In the video, Gavin was laughing. He reached over and touched Linda's face. "Don't worry about Mark," Gavin's voice boomed through the gallery speakers. "He is a numbers guy. He doesn't have the imagination to suspect us. By the time he figures out the transfer, we will be in the Caimans and he will be in a federal holding cell." A collective gasp swept through the room like a cold wind. Linda dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the concrete floor, the sound like a gunshot. I pressed the button again. The screen changed. Now it displayed a financial log. It showed a transfer of $5 million. It showed the routing number. And then, it showed the metadata. Originator IP, G. Miller _laptop _secure. Destination, S.T. Consulting _offshore. I turned to Gavin. His face had drained of all color. He looked like a wax figure melting under heat. He reached for the microphone, but his hands were shaking too badly. "Mark," he stammered. "Mark, turn it off. It's a joke. It's a deep fake. It is forensic evidence, Gavin," I said calmly. "And so is the logic bomb you planted on the company server. The one that just emailed a full confession to the FBI." Gavin looked at the door. He took a step, thinking about running. "I wouldn't," I said. The main doors of the gallery swung open. 4 men in windbreakers entered. On the back of their jackets, in bold yellow letters, were the letters FBI. They didn't run. They walked with the heavy, inevitable pace of justice. They moved through the stunned crowd, parting the sea of tuxedos and evening gowns. "Gavin Miller?" one of the agents asked. Gavin looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with terror and hatred. "You set me up." "You set yourself up," I replied. "I just checked the math." The agents took Gavin's arms. He tried to pull away, shouting something about entrapment, about a mistake, but they handcuffed him with practiced efficiency. The click of the metal was the only sound in the room. They marched him out. As he passed Linda, he didn't even look at her. I turned to my wife. She was standing alone in the center of her shattered dream. The guests were backing away from her, their whispers rising like a tide. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. But they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of a gambler who had lost the final hand. "Mark," she sobbed, reaching for my arm. "Mark, please." He forced me. I didn't want to. I stepped back, out of her reach. "The prenup has a clause, Linda," I said, my voice quiet enough that only she could hear. "Infidelity voids the settlement. But attempted fraud? That voids everything. The house, the cars, the gallery. It is all assets of a criminal investigation now. But where will I go?" She whispered. I looked at the silver dress. I looked at the woman I had loved. And I felt nothing. No anger. No pain. Just a hollow, quiet peace. "I don't know," I said. "But I suggest you start walking." I turned my back on her and walked out of the gallery. I walked past the police cars, past the flashing lights, and into the cool night air. I didn't look back. 3 months is a long time in the world of finance, but a short time in the life of a man rebuilding his soul. The winter had set in, turning Seattle into a landscape of frost and grey steel. I had sold the house in the suburbs. It was too big, too full of echoes. I moved into a loft in the city, closer to the office. It was smaller, simpler. It had exposed brick and a view of the harbor. It felt like mine. The firm had weathered the scandal. In fact, my role in exposing the fraud had earned me a promotion. I was no longer just a senior analyst. I was a partner. But the title meant less to me now. I did the work because I was good at it, not because I needed it to define me. I parked my car in the garage of Summit Tower. It was a new car. A modest sedan. I had sold the luxury vehicles. I didn't need the status symbols anymore. I walked to the elevator and rode it up to the lobby level. The morning rush was in full swing. People were hurrying, checking their phones, drinking coffee. The rhythm of the city remained unchanged. I walked toward the main security desk to swipe my badge. There was a new protocol in place since the breach. Stricter checks. More personnel. The man standing behind the console was tall, broad-shouldered. He wore the dark blue uniform of the building's security chief. His hair was cut short, neat and professional. His face was clean-shaven, revealing a strong jawline that had been hidden for years. He was reviewing a monitor, pointing something out to a junior guard. His posture was upright, commanding. He looked like a man who belonged exactly where he was. I approached the desk. "Good morning," I said. He looked up. His eyes were the same, piercing, intelligent blue. But the shadows that had haunted them were gone. "Good morning, Mr. Evans," Eli said. He didn't smile, but there was a warmth in his voice that hadn't been there before. He tapped a few keys on his console. "Your clearance is updated, sir. You are good to go." I paused, holding my badge. "How is the new system holding up?" I asked. Eli glanced at the screens, at the complex web of surveillance and access controls he now managed. "It is solid," he said. "No glitches. No variables out of place." I nodded. "And the commute?" "Much better," he said. "I have an apartment now. Just a few blocks away. It has heat. And a door that locks." "That is good," I said. "That is very good." We stood there for a moment, two men from different worlds who had met in the rain and saved each other's lives. There was no need for speeches. There was no need to rehash the past. The debt was paid. The balance was restored. I started to walk toward the elevators. Mr. Evans? Eli called out. I turned back. He leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering so only I could hear over the noise of the lobby. I checked the perimeter this morning. Everything is secure. You have a straight line to the top. I smiled. A real smile. Thank you, Mr. Thorne. Keep watching. I always do, he said. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the 42nd floor. As the doors closed, I saw Eli turn back to his monitors, the guardian of the tower. The elevator rose, lifting me up toward the sky. The numbers on the display climbed steadily. 10. 20. 30. I watched them change, finding comfort in their predictability. The equation was balanced again. The glitch was gone. And for the first time in a long time, I was not just looking at the numbers. I was looking at the future.